Hey everyone! In this video, I made a mini bubble skirt. If you want to know how I made it, then keep on watching. For this video, I used two different colors for demonstration, but I would only recommend one color and one type of fabric, ideally 100% cotton. Next, you will need fabric scissors to cut your fabric, measuring tape to measure your body and fabric crayon to mark your cutting lines, elastic waistband to make the waist elastic, thread for the sewing machine, steamer or an iron to hold folds, and last but not least, a sewing machine. The bubble skirt is divided in two layers, an inner layer and an outer layer. If you slice the circle, you will create different angles where you can create different types of skirts. For this tutorial, I want to create a A-line skirt for the inner layer and a full circle skirt for the outer layer. For the inner layer, you will be needing 4 pieces in a 22.5-degree angle, and for the outer layer, we need 4 pieces of a 90-degree angle. If this sounds confusing, I would recommend watching this video that I attached in the cards, or I will add it in the description box as well, where this method is explained very well. Now that we know the deconstruction of the bubble skirt, it is time to collect your measurements. We will be needing your full waist, your desired skirt length, and the radius. Starting with the waist, take your measurement tape and put it around your waist to measure your waistline for your skirt, and measure the desired skirt length vertically from your waist down to where you want your skirt to end. Write it down and let's move on to the radius. What is radius? In simple words, a radius is a measurement of distance from the center of a circular object to its outermost edge or boundary. Here you can see an example where the radius is located. For the bubble skirt, we need to calculate the radius. There's a formula which you can use to calculate, so just put your waist in the formula and then you will get your radius. This is the formula for the inner layer, and I added an extra sum, which is ×2, because I want to make the waist elastic. Here's an example for my waist. And if you don't know what this symbol is, that's pi, which is equal to approximately 3.14. Moving on to the outer layer, it's a similar kind of formula but a bit different because this is for a full circle skirt. Just put your waist in the formula again, and then you will have your radius per quarter for the outer layer. Here's a summary of all the measurements that we need to make the bubble skirt. One thing, for the outer layer, I added 5 centimeters extra for the skirt length. This is because it will get folded into the inner layer, which those extra centimeters will be needed. All these measurements are excluding seam allowance, so you can add them during sewing. Here you can see exactly what pieces you need to cut to make the bubble skirt. Take your outer layer fabric and place it like this. Make sure you start from a corner that is 90 degrees. You first want to start to mark your radius. Then take your fabric crayon and start measuring your radius from the corner up to your radius measurement. My radius was 11.3 for the outer layer, so I'm marking this on my fabric. Then connect the dots to trace your first cutting line. Next is marking the skirt length. Start measuring from your radius line to the top at around 2 to 5 centimeters for the top and about 2 centimeters for the bottom for the seam allowance. Then mark your skirt length including the seam allowance and mark again around the corner. Then trace the line again. Take your fabric scissors and cut it out. And there we have our first piece for the outer layer. And repeat these steps 3 more times to have 4 pieces in total. You can place the cutout piece on top of the fabric and cut around to speed up the process. And then you will have something like this. Now we will create the inner layer. Place your fabric like this and fold it 2 times in half. This way we will create that 22.5-degree angle for our inner piece. Then mark your radius again. Then from your radius, you will mark your skirt length. Make sure to add seam allowance as well, on the top and bottom around 2 to 5 centimeters. Then cut it out. And there you have your inner piece. Now let's sew it together. Sew a straight line on the sides and add a zigzag stitch on the ends to prevent from shredding. This is optional though, since this part won't be visible on the outside. Connect all 4 pieces together by sewing all sides together. Make sure you sew everything on one side so that you create a seamless outer layer. When you sew everything together, it should look something like this. Now the fun part, which is making the ruffles. There's a technique called gathered stitches. To do this, put this wheel all the way to the left or put it on 4. This way the length of the stitch will be long and loose, which we then can pull to create those ruffles. For the bubble skirt, you want to sew 2 straight lines on each quarter with a distance from around 1 to 2 centimeters. Start sewing, and when you reach the end, you can go back and forth with the stitch to close the ends. The start should be open for pulling. When you sew the 2 straight lines, grab the 2 strands in the front and start pull them gently. You will see it will create a ruffle. Push back the ruffles and keep pulling again until you can't make more ruffles. You can pin it to keep it in place or leave it like that and continue with the next quarter. When you've done all quarters, it should look something like this. Now we're gonna attach the inner layer to the outer layer. Pin or place the inner layer around the outer layer. And make sure when you attach the layers to sew above the stitch of the ruffles so you won't see the stitch when wearing it. This is optional though, but if you want, you can remove the leftover fabric because we won't need this part, but it will be inside the bubble skirt so you won't see it anyways. I stitched a straight line diagonally and cut the leftover fabric. And I also added a zigzag. Now we're gonna sew the tops together. An important step is to make the skirt equally so that it's not uneven when you're wearing it. To To check this, you can pin the tops together, or you can hold it up and see if any sides need more fabric, and so on. If you have leftover fabric at the top, you can cut it to make the top more clean and prep for the next step. Then add a zigzag stitch to lock it from shredding. I forgot to do this, but make sure to do it. Now you want to attach the elastic on the top of the waist. Measure your waist first with the elastic and mark where your waist ends. This will be an indicator when we're gonna sew. Place your elastic on top of the skirt, sew it vertically to attach it first, and then sew horizontally around the waist. Important is that you pull the elastic waistband gently, put one hand behind the sewing machine to pull gently, and also pull gently with your other hand in front of the sewing machine to create that elastic waist. There are many ways to create an elastic waist, but because I want mine to be invisible and I don't like an extra band on top of my skirt, I do it this way. When it's done, it should look something like this. The last step is to fold the elastic inside and steam or iron to hold the fold. Then you want to attach the elastic to the inner layer. I hand sewed this part because it was easier. I just sewed a few corners so that the elastic won't fold outside. And if you've done that, you're finished. So here's the end result. We made a mini bubble skirt with an elastic invisible waistband and perfect for the spring or summertime. This is how it looks in the front. This is how it looks from the inside. If you have any questions, let me know. And if you're gonna recreate this bubble skirt, tag me on Instagram, and good luck!